You are now listening to the Fighting Back podcast, and here's your host, Jessica Travis.
Welcome to the Fighting Back podcast. My name is Jessica Travis, and I am here with Nayef Mubarak. And can you tell us a little bit about your firm? I know that you've been practicing immigration law for a really long time, but can you give us little details on that?
Sure. Well, thank you for having me first, Jessica. We've been open since 2016, so we're coming around 9 years. I've been practicing a little over 15 in immigration. We're a full service immigration firm. And what that typically means is you'll see your range of $1 million investor green cards to deportation defense for domestic violence victims or asylum seekers. So we're pretty blessed, I would say, to see the gambit of types of immigration cases. And with those, we, of course, handle the occasional PI case.
And I always like to ask this of people, but can you just tell us why you're passionate about this area of law? Because I feel like in order to do immigration law for as long as you've done it, there has to be a passion behind that.
So I absolutely wanted no interest in immigration law. I am a son of immigrants, and I thought to myself in law school, I don't need my 94 first cousins calling me with questions or extended family, active, very proud Arab, Palestinian American, and we have naturally a lot of immigration questions. However, in law school, I thought I was going to be an entertainment lawyer watching Entourage,
Yeah.
and I took an immigration class, and I represented asylum seekers who from Haiti, and actually did a whole court case under my professor, and then there was no turning back. You just kind of knew it was meant to be, I would say.
That is amazing. Awesome. Well, I would love to jump right in and kind of talk a little bit about immigration as it is today, how it relates to criminal and other areas of practice. So I guess one of the first things I want to talk about is here at Fighter Law, we do a lot of criminal defense work. And sometimes our clients are arrested on a criminal case, and then they get what we learn is an ICE hold. Can you tell us a little bit about what an ICE hold is and why it exists?
So an ICE hold is basically a detainer. You can pay, a lot of times somebody gets charged with a DUI. And usually if they're a foreign national, meaning not a U.S. citizen, ICE is informed. And ICE can place a hold because they want to verify whether or not they want to take this person into custody. So even if you pay like a state bond for your DUI example, there's a hold, that person's not getting out. And typically ICE will come see them to make a determination as to whether or not they're going to release them or take them from state custody into ICE custody.
When anybody is arrested on a criminal case and we talk to our clients about, their criminal rights, one of the things that we say is when you're arrested and a law enforcement officer tries to come and talk to you about your case that you just got arrested on, it's best to not say anything. But talk to me about when an ICE officer goes to the jail to talk to somebody about their ICE hold.
So they absolutely have the right to refuse to answer the ICE agent's questions. And a lot of times these agents will have either what's called a notice to appear, which NTA in the immigration world, this is like your charges. You're not a citizen of the United States. You're a citizen of Haiti. You overstayed your visa. And they try to get you to sign it or waive your right to a judge. So you have the right to refuse to sign that document or to request a judge. But typically, as far as your rights to remain silent, it's a little bit, that Fourth Amendment protections are a little bit more limited, I would say, or have been expanded rather than limited when it comes to ICE. So many times you see what's happening currently in our country's climate, that a lot of videos about know your rights and they come to your door and do you have to open your door? The answer is typically no. If they don't have a proper warrant, they do not have to open your door or answer those questions. But if you're out in the open streets, they typically can ask you those questions. So.
Okay. And so after the ICE agent does the interview, say the person is released, great. Well, what happens if the person remains detained, but they have a state bond for their criminal charges? Do they stay in the jail or do they go someplace else?
If they've paid the state bond and ICE wants to take them into custody, ICE will take them and then usually process them in a ERO facility, enforcement removal operations under ICE, and then decide which ICE facility, they will take them. In Florida, some of the big ones are Chrome, Bakers County up near Jacksonville. And usually that's what the process is. What we see today, and a couple months ago, all of the sheriffs in the state of Florida are the 287G agreements. So oftentimes many state or county facilities now can act as ICE facilities as well, or they can dedicate a certain amount of beds. So, but typically and historically, they would take them to an ICE facility.
Is there any way for somebody who has a loved one in ICE detention to be able to look up where that person is or what facility they're in?
You definitely need to be tenacious. It's very scary when somebody gets taken into custody, because oftentimes if they're detained, let's say at 33rd, and they've gone somewhere, but if somebody's picked up on the side of the road, oftentimes this is what you're hearing people say, I have no idea where they are. And that is actually true. So this is going to be a plug for my social media. We have a know your rights or how to find a loved one tips. There's something called an ICE detainee locator, which you just type that into Google, ICE locator, and it pops up. So if your loved one is a foreign national that doesn't have status, you really need to know how their name looks on their passports. If they have an alien number, which is a 9-digit number, or USCIS number, you can see that on the work permit. That is the fastest way to find somebody. Otherwise, you're plugging and chugging their names and the date of birth and the country of origin trying to find them. Now, keep in mind, it also takes usually 2 to 4 days for somebody to show up into the system.
I see.
So there's even 2 or 4 days where even your attorney doesn't know where they are. And sometimes we have to contact the ERO operations, hoping perhaps somebody may be open to responding to our inquiry and letting us know if that person is in their custody or not. And I do want to say everything today's conversation, it's a very fast-paced environment. And what's true today on this recording may very well not be true tomorrow, as we know things are changing quickly. So.
Very true. Well, and also that kind of leads me into a question about a relatively new act. I think the Laken Riley Act, which addresses mandatory detention and when that detention is mandatory. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, briefly, I think there's certain challenges on that being happened, but typically what they're saying, if you entered the country unlawfully and were committing or arrested or accused of committing any particular crime, then you can be held without bond. So mandatory detention, meaning you don't even have the right to file a motion for bond.
Wow.
So it's a big deal. Luckily, I haven't encountered with it yet because of the types of clientele that we have. We've done several bonds. I've done like 8 from April to now. And like last year, I probably did 1. But the Laken Riley Act has really sweeping measures, taking away a lot of rights and processes that were available previously. And so causing people to fight for their right to remain here or any deportation defense, but by doing so while in custody.
And I think that act has been appealed or is in the process of appellate review.
Right, which is why I mentioned the litigation, just because there's some portions I think that are not going to be enforced, or currently there's an injunction, but I could be wrong.
So it's still, the law itself, I think, is fair to say, is in flux.
Correct.
Okay, that makes sense. So the next thing I wanted to kind of talk about, if you can briefly explain when somebody is arrested on our end as the criminal defense attorney, the question that they always ask is this the type of charge that is going to result in deportation proceedings? Generally, how is that question answered?
It depends.
Yeah,
the famous lawyer.
That is the lawyer answer.
So, of course, we have multiple tiers of people who are not U.S. citizens. You have the permanent residents, you have international students or visitors, then you have people out of status. And basically, if you're out of status, the arrest itself has now changed your course of life in the United States, because you're now in removal proceedings, more likely than not. If you're an international student, typically in what's called an inadmissible offense, if it's an aggravated DUI with injuries, that might cause your status to be revoked. Again, just to stay current, a couple months ago, we saw all of these students getting their visas revoked without notice.
Right.
And it could be somebody who might have had an encounter with law enforcement. The case was dismissed. Thankfully, the courts came down and said that was not permissible. There was lax of due process there. And then you have permanent residents and you who don't want to be placed in deportation proceedings or lose their status based on certain convictions. And the analysis that we have to do is, how long have you been here? Is this a deportable offense? Will this affect your citizenship? It's like what we call a minefield. So you got to be very mindful where you're walking, and you better have a great criminal defense attorney who's open to doing the necessary work to avoid stepping on a landmine, because it's very easy to hire a cheaper or inexperienced criminal defense attorney or immigration lawyer, and then they want to just put you into a plea deal or diversion program, not knowing the consequences. Well, guess what? In Florida, withhold of adjudication is still a conviction for immigration, and many times diversion programs can land you the equivalent of a guilty charge. So that's kind of the things that are so important that I really wish people understand. Like, well, they told me it's not a conviction. Well, guess what? It is for immigration purposes.
Yeah. And I can tell you, as a board certified in criminal trial, as soon as an individual tells me that they are not a citizen, the first thing that we do is arrange for them to have an immigration attorney. And then I work closely with that immigration attorney before any type of case is resolved, either with diversion or dismissal or
really
plea
becomes
or
like a co-counsel experience. Like, hey,
Absolutely.
we're being offered this. Can you do this? And that's what requires is the dedication there to make sure that your livelihood is not going to be affected as a foreigner in this country. And so it's really critical that people understand that. And that's why I'm also happy to be here. Hopefully we can educate. I always say knowledge is power. So
Absolutely. So I also, we're talking a lot about if somebody is currently arrested and have current criminal charges pending. Do past criminal charges or a past arrest record play any role in immigration proceedings?
Sure. So first, it's important to understand that under the Immigration Nationality Act, there's inadmissibilities and removabilities. And typically inadmissibility is if you're trying to enter the country, unlike your tourist visa. So believe it or not, a simple marijuana charge can make you inadmissible, but not deportable.
Wow. Okay.
Okay. So you also have to speak to, please, if anybody's listening, if you have any criminal history, speak to an immigration attorney before traveling. It's so critical. And so, yes.
So that will keep you, so you could leave
and then not
be able to
and then be
placed,
be entered back and then placed in removal proceedings because of that conviction.
Wow.
But that conviction while you're here doesn't qualify you to be removed.
Wow. Okay.
So different sets of standards if you're here to remove you or if you're seeking to enter.
Okay.
Even if you're a permanent resident. So
good to know.
And the past, to your point, past history, in that way can affect if you got out, you didn't have detention and no big deal. It was the 90s, right? And then you travel 20 years later and now, oh crap, I'm in removal proceedings because I never bothered to file a citizenship application. Happens more than you'd like to know. So that can affect you that way. Also, past criminal history and you're detained, let's say, can affect your chances of getting a bond. You might become a danger to community based on your past criminal history. So absolutely, I can't emphasize that enough.
So somebody who is not a citizen, is there any way to look up in a system, like, do I have an immigration case that's pending against me? Do I have something out there that I just don't know about?
Again, really important. If you're not a citizen and you've ever had what's called a denied application with USCIS, or you just had some negative history with the law and you're not sure, there's two ways to go about it. First, you should always, what we like to do is a FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act. Anybody can do that. If you want to just know your mom's grandmother's immigration history, do a FOIA on them, see their forms. Really interesting. And plus you'll see how he came to the country. He might have given you a tall tale.
Yep.
The other thing is there is also, for my Google people out there, if you type into Google EOIR, Executive Office of Immigration Review, case status, it'll bring you to the immigration court system and you can enter your A number to see if you have a court date or a past court date. And it happens maybe once a month. I have people with deportation orders doing consultation with me, not knowing they had a deportation order. And to go a little one step further. Just yesterday, United States Citizenship Immigration Services, USCIS, announced that since February, they have placed 27,000 people into deportation proceedings. USCIS is the place you go. It's called like services. It's supposed to be like where you go to become a citizen, where you go to get your green card renewed. But many people don't realize that if you have criminal history and you think you were maybe scot-free previously, when you do your citizenship application, they're reviewing to see if you're removable.
Wow.
If your marriage case was denied because you missed a form, not because your marriage wasn't real, but because you missed a form, they now have a right since February to put people in proceedings and prioritize it. And 27,000 people have been put in deportations announced by the government agency just yesterday.
Wow. So it really does make sense for anybody who is not a citizen to really have a consultation with an immigration attorney just to make sure that if they think they're just enjoying life and going on as normal, that to protect themselves.
So, even like when checking the court system, if you miss court, you get an order of removal.
Wow.
Deported on the spot for not being present in court.
Even if you didn't know about it? Or
right. And all the government has to prove is that it was mailed to your last address.
Wow.
Can I share a story?
Yes, absolutely.
Young lady came to me. Her family came to me. She was going through the immigration process. I was probably 2 or 3 years into the lawyer life, and ICE took her in. She was doing a routine proceeding, going through the marriage case. She did not know she had a deportation order. They were going to if you have a deportation order, you don't have the right to an immigration judge. You're subject to expedited removal. You don't really have a right for a bond. And she's like hysterically crying, and her family's telling me, no, she told. So I call the ICE agents, and I don't know how this happened, but he kind of admitted to me, wait, I see something here that she did change her address. But somebody from ICE didn't update the court who got her address from ICE. So I had to do an emergency motion to reopen based on his statement from what I heard on the phone. And that was sufficient at the time, back in 2014, to reopen the case. Thank God, she's a citizen now.
Right.
So just to think about, when we say there's a broken system, when we being me, pretty even-keeled immigration attorney, not an open border guy, but a law guy, right? When we say it's broken, it's systems like that, where the government just has to mail you a notice where we don't know if that address was delivered. You don't even have to show proof of delivery, like just the notice. So even if it doesn't ever get sent in the mail by clerical error, that's sufficient for the government to establish you had enough notice.
Wow. So how can someone be proactive? What can an individual do in order to?
Well, if you're in any type of criminal trouble, you need a criminal defense attorney, you need an immigration lawyer. If you're not in criminal trouble and you just want to know, what is my circumstances? I'm undocumented, or what can I do for mom or dad? What's the worst case scenario? You need to have a consultation with an immigration attorney who can evaluate your whole family's history, do the FOIA's requests. FOIA's can take several months to obtain to see what is the family history. So just like you go to the doctor, you get your blood work done. I call this the blood work. We have to see what has happened in your life and in your genetic history to see if there's any relief. Because sometimes we find things from the old laws that might help us today. Or sometimes people don't realize they were deported in 1994 when they were fingerprinted, when they were 16. All of these things are super necessary to determine. And sometimes we find nothing. So what you can do is find out what's in your file, do the FOIA request, speak to an attorney, and prepare for a rainy day. Meaning if you are undocumented and you've been here with no issues for 20 years and you pay your taxes but no criminal history, but 20 years ago you crossed the border, then you start to document that you've been here for that long. That's what's going to help us try to defend your case and get you a bond and to avoid this. The issue is, depending on the government's policy, where today there is no discretion, as we see, that's a matter of fact. That's not an opinion. There's no discretion. ICE agents have a quota now of trying to detain as many people as possible. So they don't have the ability to determine, should we really take this person into custody or not? A lot of times it's above them. So to prepare, speak to an attorney, document history, have somebody assigned to where are these documents located, powers of attorney. You really can't, you really need to think about that if you're somebody who's been undocumented in this country for so long.
Okay. Other than removal proceedings, are there other areas of law that a non-citizen needs to be aware of, even in the family law proceedings and estate planning, things like that?
So I think when there's a big touch on crimmigration, right? Criminal immigration, and I don't know if that's just easy marketing, sounds better, but immigration, because of immigration is basically family members and people, it touches every aspect of life. So if you're going through family law, if you're going through a divorce, that might come up in custody battles. If somebody sponsored you to come here to this country and they filled out an affidavit of support, but now doesn't want to pay you alimony, well, they kind of signed an agreement to the government that they will support you. So I've heard of divorce attorneys using that Form 864 in divorce proceedings to do it. Now, something I learned recently is that if you're not a citizen and you die and you have a bunch of land and assets in the United States, the taxes and inheritance stuff for your heirs is different if you're a foreigner.
Wow. Okay.
So even if you're not a citizen, but you're a green card and you don't want to become a citizen, you're cool with having a green card,
right?
Even your estate planning needs to be treated differently. So just like we're a country of immigrants, we're a country of laws, I think immigration touches all of it personally. And it's pretty clear to see how that works, because sometimes you're like, man, I did not think this would come into play. You start thinking about patents and stuff, or countries, or custody, right. Then you have to think about these treaties. Can I get that kid back from Saudi Arabia? Well, we don't have a treaty with them. So like, there's like so many different things where immigration, which kind of, now I'm geeking out, so sorry. But
we're getting a little in the weeds, but that's okay.
Sorry. Rein me in. But that's, so estate planning, family law, crimmigration, huge.
Well, I know you've already given us a lot of resources that individuals can go to for information. Are there any other resources that you think are available, or places that individuals can go to get information, to get education about the current immigration practices?
I mean, there's so many places that are doing, well, first, if you're a green card holder who wants to become a citizen, like there's free classes at the library. A lot of times you can look that up. If you're, what's happening in today with custody, there's town hall meetings, there's Know Your Rights seminars. But I say take everything you see on TikTok with a grain of salt.
Of course.
TikTok, I'm not hating on it, right? We're all on it. But be mindful, a lot of times that's abbreviated. There's nuances, there's things. So if you can't afford a consultation, look for in-person Know Your Rights or nonprofits, and also, FOIAs, and hopefully those resources we share today.
And if somebody does want to schedule a consultation with you, with your office, to get more information about their own specific situation, their family's situation, how can they reach you?
So we're Mubarak Law, and we're in downtown Orlando. And what's great about immigration is federal, meaning we represent clients from all over the country. So there's no limitations on that. So just contact us at our office, 407-502-3000, or Mubarak Law on all of the social media platforms.
Well, I really appreciate you taking your time to come in here today and to nerd out with me about immigration and all things related. Yeah. So thank you for having us on. I know I learned a lot, and I hope our listeners also learned a lot.
Thank you for having me again.
Thank you so much for listening. If you found this episode helpful or informative, don't forget to follow us on social media and share this podcast with your friends. Like, follow, subscribe so you never miss a show, and help others know their rights by spreading the word. Your support helps us keep fighting back. The information provided in the Fighting Back podcast is for general informational purposes only and is not intended as legal advice. Every case is unique and should be reviewed by a qualified attorney who can provide guidance based on the specific facts and circumstances of your case. Listening to this podcast does not create an attorney-client relationship with Fighter Law or any of its attorneys. If you're facing any legal issue, we strongly encourage you to consult with a licensed attorney directly.